We are back. Thanks for joining us. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. I'm so grateful to have you guys join me today. I have an amazing guest. Her name is Tiffany Rosenhan. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. And I also want to thank our sponsor, Veracity Networks. Thank you for believing in me and helping get the word out to this podcast. It's really got some traction out there, and it's helped a lot of people, and the responses have been overwhelming, positive, and I'm just so grateful for it. A little background on Tiffany, and I'm so excited to have her on. She was referred by a mutual friend of ours, and I was just, when I found out about what she's doing and how she lives her life, I'm just pumped to have her on. You guys are going to really be inspired with her. So Tiffany is the debut author of a young adult spy thriller, Girl from Nowhere, which, if I understand correctly, sales are going great, and
sure hope so.
Things are taking off, right? She's a mother of 4 young daughters and has a degree in political science. She loves to travel the world with her children and her husband, who is a critical care physician, and she resides here in Mill Creek, Utah. So thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and you grew up back east, right? And so let's talk a little bit about that. Tell us about growing up back east.
Great. Well, I was born in Ohio, which, some people call the Midwest.
I guess that's not
Utah,
back east.
It feels
Yeah,
like, we were
that to me does.
We were the northeast corner of Ohio. So my dad's family had a dairy farm that they had for a couple hundred years, and
right.
So I was born in Ohio, and even after we moved from Ohio when I was about 4, we still returned every summer to go visit the farm.
Oh,
so
okay.
it always felt like home to me for a long period of time.
Nice.
And, so I had kind of an idyllic childhood. My first few years, a lot of playing outdoors and just a lot of creating. My parents were big into, my mom at least was big into having us create
And
stuff.
stuff.
Part of my childhood.
Yeah. So, and I think we've talked before about how they, pushed you to read a lot, right?
Right. Like my sister, I have an identical twin sister, which is, when people ask me about myself, it's almost always the first thing I say, because more often than not, they've met my twin sister and they assume they know me, and I just have to clarify a little bit. So I have an identical twin sister, and my parents divorced when I was young, so we spent time going back and forth and going, my sisters and I going to visit my dad's family farm. And my grandma always had a rule: you could read, embroider, sew, which were 2 different things for her.
Right.
Embroider, sew, cook, or play outside. Those were the 5 only options.
Was it.
That's it. That's all we could do after we did our tours. So we had my childhood involved a lot of reading, and even at my own home, all year round, we didn't watch much television. In fact, I don't even remember watching television.
Really?
Until I was almost in junior high or high school. My mom would rent VHS tapes if we were to watch anything, and so TV wasn't a big part of my life, but reading was. And my mom had this rule: we would go to the library, and I can't remember the limits, but we each had our limit from the library, and we could just collect any books we wanted. My mom did not choose for us. She did not encourage us. She just said, fill up the bag with books that interest you. So we'd come home with books on, space technology that were way too advanced for us to understand, or crime thrillers that were way too morbid. But overall, I think I loved that it taught us to take charge of our own reading and encourage us to read what interested us, and ultimately discover new topics that were interesting to us.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
As a kid, was it hard to not watch TV, or did you not know any different?
I didn't know any different. This is like the 90s. I just think I didn't know any different. Like, I remember staying home from school once. My mom worked, so she was gone. And I remember like Jenny Jones was on and Ricky Lake. And I was like, what are these shows and who are these people? It was like eye-opening that this world existed. But I don't think my mom had anything against TV. We just never had it on. I just think it didn't interest her. And it was, pre-Netflix, pre-TiVo. So, and she worked after I was about 8 or 9. So I think it just wasn't on during the daytime. So we read instead, or we created all different things.
What did you gravitate towards as you were reading a lot? What did you love? What did you end up loving reading?
I feel like I went through phases. I always loved encyclopedias. So
that's interesting.
At my grandma's house, in fact, both sets of grandparents were voracious readers. So my dad's parents, they had run a dairy farm for years, but they'd all gone to the Ohio State University. And my grandma had been a school teacher before she settled down with 6 kids. And so her house was full of books, and she just seemed to collect atlases and encyclopedias. And there were these great collections. And my favorite one was this illustrated version from like the 1960s. And it's funny how you retrospectively look back at these things that spark your interest. And I remember reading these encyclopedias and focusing on this one country I couldn't pronounce, which was Czechoslovakia.
Uh-huh.
And she says, well, that's no longer a country. And I'm like, what do you mean it's no longer a country? And she's like, well, it no longer exists. And I couldn't process why it no longer existed. And this was obviously mid-90s, and Czechoslovakia had dissolved into two countries,
Right,
the Czech Republic and Slovakia. But as a 8-year-old, I couldn't process how a country just no longer
Just decides
exists.
Yeah.
I'm like, did it disappear? Did it fall into the earth? What happened? And so encyclopedias I gravitated toward, and those simple snippets of information interested me, and I just gravitated toward those. So encyclopedias, and then my mother's father had a huge library built on his property, I guess you could say, and it was just literature. He loved literature.
Right.
And he was French Swiss, so a lot of it was in French, but I think both my grandparents and therefore both my parents were huge readers, and it didn't matter what, it was all interesting. And so I never had boundaries with, maybe I should have. I feel like I read a lot of mature stuff when I was young.
Yeah.
I never had a lot of boundaries with reading, although my favorite author I flew through in about the 7th grade was Mary Higgins Clark.
Really?
And she wrote these,
Okay.
I don't know if you call them crime mysteries or murder mysteries, but they were, I loved the way she intrigued me. That was very interesting to me, the way she just set the pace of the story. And Tom Clancy, I love Tom Clancy. I don't know why I read
Well,
so
it's
much
kind of the same what you did with your book, which we're going to get into in a minute, right? Kind of went down that path a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So I can't wait to know more about that. But I want to ask you, what's it like being an identical twin?
It's awesome. It's funny. I don't know any different, obviously.
Here, pull that just a little closer to you.
There we go.
There we go. Perfect.
I don't know much different or any different really, but when you have an identical twin, you kind of get to share your life with someone from the beginning.
Uh-huh.
And I think everything I experience is by default different than what other people would experience.
Yeah.
You go to a new school, you make new friends, you have a boyfriend, you fail an exam, you do these things. And with an identical twin, you just don't feel alone. And so it's kind of a great, I never had the loneliness, I guess, in my childhood that other people might experience. And in fact, my oldest daughter, who's 13 now, a couple years ago, she was really frustrated with me. And I can't even remember the situation. All I remember her saying was, "You just don't know what it's like to be a single person." And I thought, that's true. I don't have a lot of compassion for that, because I simply cannot process. I went through my entire life being one of something.
Yeah.
And so having been to many, many schools throughout my childhood, and a new school every, 6, 12, 18 months, I always had a friend. So I didn't have the same experience attending new schools that you would, that my older, younger sisters did and the others would have. So I felt a little like I went a certain route through school, but I wasn't affected in the same way because I had my twin sister.
Yeah, kind of felt safe, like you had someone by your side at all times. Mm-hmm. Where a lot of kids go, I'm by myself, here we go.
Yeah,
So
and with
that's
a twin,
kind of
you're
nice.
not by yourself. So
yeah, right on.
It's awesome. I wish everyone could try it.
So growing up, what were some of your experiences that really stand out to you? Maybe some lessons that your parents taught you and things like that.
We had a lot of freedom growing up. I would say we were allowed to explore a lot. In the summer times, we didn't do structured activities. I had very few extracurriculars. And this was back in the time that, even if you didn't play competition soccer, you could still, play soccer.
Still play, right, yeah.
So we didn't do a lot of the extracurriculars. And I just remember a lot of freedom. And I feel really fortunate that my parents encouraged us to be outside a lot. That was a huge component of my childhood, was being outside. And we, if we lived in a house near like a canal or a creek or a ditch, we were always in the water, and we were always building forts, and we were always doing stupid stuff I probably would not want to let my kids to do. But, we'd dam up the river and tube down the river. And we had a lot of freedom in my childhood. And I think what I want for my own kids is I feel as though freedom in playing outside teaches you to solve problems, and it teaches you to ask the right questions. And if you're with people, it teaches you to collaborate and compromise. Yeah. And I want my children to have those same experiences, because I feel like the lessons I learned with free play throughout my childhood have enabled me to solve problems as an adult.
Interesting.
And so that's been important in my life, and I'm really grateful that my parents encouraged us to kind of have a lot of free play outside.
And now you're passing that on to your 4 daughters.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, and especially now in today's age with the phones and social media, how that can consume hours and hours of a day.
Instantaneously.
Right?
Yeah.
Versus like what you were doing, you were reading, you were being creative, you're out playing, doing those things. And, I saw something, a study, this was several years ago actually, where it was about young boys growing up who they don't know how to throw a baseball.
Oh my gosh.
And they attributed it to because they're inside playing video games most of the time versus back when I was growing up too, we were outside throwing the ball.
Totally.
So it's cool that you are still trying to incorporate that with your own children.
I'm trying, but it's not easy.
I know.
Because and that's not the general consensus.
For sure.
You know, I tell my girls most often, I want them to recognize and begin to acknowledge the personal reward they feel having done an activity or created something, you know, draw, you know, make a coloring page or, you know, create their own story or build a fairy house outside. Those things are rewarding and we feel success after achieving them. Whereas time spent in technology, while it might be appealing at the time, you don't feel anything once you finish it.
Right.
At least I don't. And so I'm trying to teach them, and myself included, to recognize those personal reward that you feel, the personal reward you feel playing outside and being in the fresh air and building or creating or reading. And it's a different feeling than you feel after being on a phone or on, you know, any type of social media. So
yeah, you know, that's a good point. I think how you feel differently. You know, it's like, you know, it's almost like social media drains you to the point where it actually even kind of hurts.
Right.
I mean, does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
And you feel and I feel invigorated. I mean, I might feel tired and fatigued after playing outside, but I feel personally invigorated.
Right.
And that's kind of the balance. So, and I'm not saying we have no technology. I mean, we love a good movie as much as anyone, but in general, I've always really limited. And that's simply because I never had it. And I couldn't even afford a cell phone when they came out. So like, I think I came late to the ball game a little bit.
Wow. Yeah. Well, so what were some of the principles that your parents taught you growing up as a kid? You know, what were some of the things they expected of you?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So both my parents grew up in very different households from one another. My father's household, he joined the LDS church when he was in his 20s. Okay. And his household was non-denominational Christian. I think they might have been Methodist at one point, but very, let's call them loose Christians. They went to church every Sunday, but they weren't they weren't Bible studying or anything of the sort. And then my mom's family was just, her mom went on a religious search and went through every religion that Southern California had to offer, and they eventually settled on the LDS church for a time. And my mom ended up staying in the LDS church, even though the rest of the family didn't stay long, I could say. Okay. Some of the family stayed. But they both taught me core values of being kind. If there's like one word that reflected what they ultimately believed about our purpose on earth, is to be kind to other people. And they really took that commandment seriously, to love thy neighbor as thyself. So they always taught me, no matter what else, if you're not kind to your neighbor and your family members, then nothing else you're doing is super relevant. Right. And it doesn't necessarily harken back to a certain religion or religious principle, other than just treating others the way you want to be treated. Right. That was super important to them. And I consider myself very religious and very faithful, and I consider both my parents the same way, but the lessons I learned from them were simple, and they were untethered to a specific denomination. It was be kind. If you're not kind, you're not doing it right. Right. So I'm trying to be. Yeah.
Well, from what I know of you already, you know, and if people knew the background of, you know, what's happened the last few days with us, you've been very kind.
No worries. So no worries. Technology is not my favorite. So
it really is not my favorite either. This is where I wish I had the assistant in that. But so is that something you've passed along to your own children? I would assume you have. I sure hope how's that been going?
I will say nothing makes me more angry than when they are mean to each other, mean to someone else, or they say unkind things, because I feel like there's so little we can control, and the way we treat and communicate to others is something we should be able to control. Right. And so I lose my patience much more easily when they act unkindly, and it's very obvious. Yeah. Just because there's not an excuse for it for so many ways. And sometimes I try to say, I understand that your feelings are hurt, or I understand that you felt this way, but it's not excusable. We can't treat each other that way. Yeah. And we have to try really hard, because I think sometimes our natural inclination is to be, and I catch myself the same way, to prove your point, or to give an insult, or to act in a way that proves that you're right. And that's just not always the end result that I'd want.
So that's awesome. And one of the questions I have around that is, and this is a big question, I know, but how has that principle like blessed your life? Just living that way. And I know that's a big question.
That's a great question.
I would just love to hear your perspective on that.
I feel as though I'm really appreciative when people act kindly. Like I think of, how do I say this? I'm receptive to when people want to act kindly. I feel as though forgiveness can be complicated and also super simple at the same time.
Yeah.
And I want to share an act of kindness. So my husband had a stroke 18 months ago, and he came home. Yeah, he had a stroke and they had brain surgery. And our mutual friend, so she's a hairdresser and she's amazing. And he came home from the hospital and he had a huge brain surgery. So a few days later, and they sent him home from the hospital a little bit early, and he ended up going back. But when they sent him home, he wasn't like cleaned off at all. And so our mutual friend came over and she like gave him a haircut because they'd shaved like half his head. Yeah. And it was, there was like 28 huge staples in his head and it was messy. Yeah. And I didn't want to touch anything because it's scary. And I didn't know how to cut his hair. And so she came over and she just like cleaned him all up. And it was such a simple act of kindness that meant so much in such a stressful time. And to her, it meant almost nothing. And it was using what I loved about it is she used her skill set as a hairdresser to show so much compassion toward someone who'd had such a traumatic brain injury. Yeah. And I mean, we laugh about it because she just jokes she doesn't even remember almost in a way. And for us, it was huge. And so I think sometimes we act in really significant ways that are memorable, and other times it's super simple. Right. So I hope that to my point of being receptive is when someone wants to serve you in that regard or extend an act of kindness, it's easy to say, no, it's okay. I know how to do this. It's harder to say, I really don't know what I'm doing. Yes. Thank you for helping. Thank you for offering to help. Thank you for extending yourself and your service to me. Yeah. So that's, I think, part of it as well is receiving kindness as much as extending it.
For sure. What a beautiful story. And, I can only imagine what a traumatic time that was for you and your husband to go through that, and for your whole family. Right. And then something as simple as, like you said,
a haircut.
Getting a haircut, getting cleaned up like that. But how you just felt, man, the love that Cicely, we'll say her name, Cicely, shout out to
Sorry,
Cicely.
Cicely. Didn't know if you wanted your name claimed or not.
You're on here now. But how that, just it's probably something you both needed in that moment, actually, just that feeling of love and compassion.
Right. And I'm super appreciative for her. And I think she does it. The thing I love about Cicely, and I'm going to use her as an example, is when people act kindly and they are service oriented, they tend to just do it. Right. And they tend not to wait for permission or this grand gesture or finding out how to act. They just do it. And that's something I think I could certainly learn from, and we all could, is just acting in a way that, maybe puts you out of your comfort zone a little bit sometimes, or other times just you share what you already know, and you share your skill and your expertise and your skill set. And I don't mean skill set, technical skill set. I mean, if you know how to do something, you're capable of doing something, that's a skill. And so sharing that with others.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Beneficial for all of us.
If it's okay to ask, how's your husband doing? Is
he's
he doing okay?
Great. Yeah,
Good.
He's doing really well. So it's been a long recovery, but I mean, all things considered, we're super grateful for how far he's come. And it's a long, a stroke. It was a big hemorrhagic stroke and a big brain surgery. So he's really doing fantastic.
That's awesome.
It's been a long recovery, but overall we're really happy.
Glad to hear that. Glad.
Yeah. So thank you. Yes. Everything's good. I'm not super emotional about it. I just think certain moments during that time period kind of bring me back to what I felt then. But what I felt then was ultimately peace. I never felt afraid.
Really?
No, I didn't. I didn't feel afraid. I felt as though everything, whatever outcome we'd reach was going to be the right outcome. And that was a super comforting feeling. So it didn't scare me as much as nothing really. It was equally scary and beautiful. Yeah,
at the same time.
At the same time.
Yep. I've heard that before with other people going through something like, well, I just felt I felt at peace that it was going to work out the way it needed to. And
I love that.
I was okay.
Well, there's like that Bible verse, without sorrow, you don't know true joy. And I feel like sometimes those moments of desperation enable you to see something incredibly powerful and beautiful. Wow. So without those deep moments, you wouldn't experience the joy that comes with it. So Can't have one without
very
the other.
well said. Yeah. Very well said. Well, so you graduated from the University of Utah, is
Yes.
that correct? In political science,
Yep.
is that correct? Tell us a little bit about that, and then I want to get into your book here.
Oh, okay. Well, so I gravitated toward political science. I'd always been interested in encyclopedias, I should say. I'd been interested in geography is what it really was in the world. I mean, like I said, I read those atlases. I always point to Czechoslovakia as like my aha moment. And what is this? What is diplomacy? I used to call it the trifecta: diplomacy, geography, and politics.
Yeah.
And that intrigued me, and it always had from that point on. And I was at Skyline High School, and they must have had a career fair of some type where, in the assembly, a individual spoke representing the Hinckley Institute of Politics. And when they spoke, they discussed what the Hinckley Institute did and what internships they'd offered, and et cetera. And I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a great pathway to going to graduate school and possibly teaching and going to law school. I wasn't quite sure where I would end up, although at the time I really thought I would join the Foreign Service or the CIA, which I did neither of. But that was a great lead into those career paths. So as soon as I got to the University of Utah, I just went straight into the political science program, and that enabled me to finish pretty quickly. And I loved it. I thought all the material was really interesting to me, and I loved studying it and researching it. And I was notorious for writing really, really long essays because I just didn't know when to stop.
Right. So you've obviously loved writing and all that stuff. And
I have, but it's funny.
Like
I'd always written nonfiction until after I had my oldest daughter, Savannah, and I was home alone with a baby, kind of like, well, this is kind of easy. What am I supposed to like? Having one baby, I mean, having a teenager is hard, but having a baby was not hard for me.
Right.
So as I was home, I started creatively writing, and it was bizarre because it was as though I'd been missing it my whole life, because I'd written a lot, but I'd written based on literature and nonfiction. Yeah. And I never pursued creative writing for myself. And so I'm appreciative of all my years writing nonfiction, because I think it taught me a lot about structure and having facts. And even if you're making up the facts in a fiction story, they need to be facts for the story.
Okay.
And so it taught me a lot about how to construct a story. And so I was able to translate that to fiction. But when I started writing creatively, I felt as though I'd been missing it my whole life. And it was kind of fun to like find it in a way. So I credit political science a lot with that you do a lot of writing in that course.
Right. So have you, I want to talk about your book, The Girl from Nowhere. And have you always in your back of your mind, like always, did you set out to, like, I want to write a book someday?
No, I wish I would have. I didn't. And I think I would have maybe gone through the process differently or faster. But I didn't know what I was doing. Like I said, I just wrote for fun. I consider myself first and foremost a reader before I consider myself an author.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
I want to write what I want to read. And I never set out with a book or a title or a page count or a genre or to get published. I just didn't know enough about that. And it really was really far off my radar. It always seemed like if I write a book, then maybe I'll get published. And I never thought, which I think I should have, I will write a book to get published, because then you can make a few different decisions. And I went the long circuitous route through writing, which I'm glad I did, because it enabled me to really create this huge story that I was able to deconstruct into one small story.
Right.
So I have a lot more material about Girl from Nowhere, obviously. And I feel as though the years I gained just writing for fun enabled me to create this world that maybe had I just wanted to write one book to publish it, I would have missed out on a lot of that. So
interesting.
I think whatever people ask for writing advice and becoming a published author, and I think there's no right or wrong way to do it. But I also advise people not, it's almost as though you shouldn't publish too soon, because sometimes that time that you mull over something and ruminate over it can get you farther than you might have thought the first time around.
Yeah, or you might want to write it differently, or add this, or I should probably take that out. But
and there are a lot of ways to publish, and so you can publish pretty quickly if you want to, but sometimes that's maybe not the best end result for the story. Yeah. But at the same time, some people are really gifted and they can just make it happen the first time around. So I'm not one of those people.
Oh, no. Well, so I love what you said. You want to write what you would read. Right. That's a good way to say that. And it's probably why this is a spy thriller, right?
Exactly.
So tell us.
Well, what I mean by that is I like to, when I read, I like to be entertained, intrigued, or informed. Okay. And when this character started to evolve in my head, which she did for a very long time, I wrote it first as almost just a simple coming of age story about this character that lived abroad, and she's finally making herself home here. And it just fell a little flat. It wasn't enough. And it never felt like her true story. It always felt like I was setting up her future story.
Okay.
And it was when I realized her future story was this story that things started to come together, where it became much more fast-paced and action-oriented and a lot more fun. And it's not that I won't read books that are slow. I read a lot of very slow books and I enjoy them immensely.
Yeah.
But for a book in this genre to be slow, I just don't think that would work.
It wouldn't work.
And so I knew I had to, by default, forfeit a lot of what I wanted to keep and really rework a lot of or even write what needed to be there in order to make it work as a thriller. And that was fun to do. I mean, I like the research involved. But yeah, when I say I want to read I write what I want to read, I mean that I want to enjoy a story. And if I'm reading a book regarding an issue or an interesting topic that I want to learn about, I'm more patient.
Right.
But if I'm reading to be entertained, I want to be entertained.
Okay.
And so I hope the book's entertaining, and that's kind of what it's meant to be. It's not an issue book, which in young adult fiction can kind of be problematic. They really like to sometimes focus on topics and issues.
Yeah.
And mine's not an issue book, and it doesn't have a certain genre that it just falls right into. It doesn't fit tidily within a genre. Yeah. There's not a lot of spy thrillers in young adult fiction. There's very few. And so already it's categorized as an action, thriller, romance.
Okay.
So it's a little tricky in that regard, but ultimately I think it's okay to be different, and it's outside the box, and I have no problems that it doesn't fit tidily within this genre.
Right. Okay.
It's a little bit more mature in some regards, and at the same time it's PG and clean. So it hopefully checks those boxes a little bit.
For sure. That's very cool. Well, why don't you tell us, maybe how did you come up with the title? And, maybe a little bit more background on the book itself. And then if we can, we don't have the book,
I might be able to pull up the first chapter, which is a good one.
If possible, we were going to maybe read something from it. If we can, great. If not, obviously we're going to direct our listeners to getting the book. But yeah, just maybe tell us how you came up with the name.
So the title, I actually sold the book to my agent and my publisher. Well, I sold it to my publisher as Hummingbird, and that was the original title. Yeah. And so my publisher thought maybe that wasn't going to work with the genre. And so they recommended Girl from Nowhere. So I didn't actually end up choosing that. I mean, I agreed with them, but the title just kind of fit the story, and so we went with that one. So, and
that's one of the
titles are hard to choose for an author.
They are, yeah. and is that one of the things, like when you go with a publisher, a lot of times they're the ones that will at times dictate, here's what we think the title should be. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the benefits of going with a traditional publisher, and it's particularly a really big one like Bloomsbury, is they have a great team of people on your book. And so I can be a little more hands-off, and they take.
Okay.
And so I think they're respectful of my opinion as an author. I get approval. I discuss it, but I think they view it from a marketing perspective, and particularly a book selling perspective. How does this, when you have a certain title and a certain genre, do those mesh, and does it confuse the reader? And so I think they have a lot more goes into it than I would initially presume. So I'm defensive of my title, and I may think it's the best title, but really, is it the title that will work for the general public to receive the book?
Yeah.
They know that better than I do, probably, or maybe they don't. I don't know. I assume they do.
Sure.
So
hopefully.
In some regards, you feel like I think it's when they give advice, usually it's based on experience, and they want to sell something as accurately as possible. So I was fine to switch it up. I knew actually when I sold it, I thought for sure they would change the title, because the title works really well on an almost not philosophical, but on a different level within the book, Hummingbird, but it doesn't sell kind of the story of the book.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
It's more just like if it was a piece of literary fiction, Hummingbird would be perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
So that's how the title came to be. So then we went with Girl from Nowhere, and it's funny, there's actually a few Girl from Nowheres floating around, but mine's the only one by Tiffany Rosenhan. So
yes,
that's how you know the difference.
Well, so what is your hope with this book? Like, what do you want your readers to take away from it? You know, at the
question.
end, when they're done with it, what is your hope as an author that they would take away from it?
I guess for all readers, I hope they feel like it was time well spent. You know, it's kind of a fun page turner, hopefully. Yeah. And then for girls, it's interesting. I have a female protagonist, and I've received all these trade reviews, which are professional reviews by Publishers Weekly and the School Library Journal and Book List, and they're very complimentary of the action and et cetera. But then they tend to always finish with a phrase akin to, as long as you can suspend your disbelief, which is interesting only because when they describe characters, spy or action thrillers with teen protagonists who are boys or male, they claim the same things and then don't add that in.
Really?
So it's pretty significantly, like there's a pretty strong disparity between whether or not they use the phrase suspension of disbelief with female protagonists as action heroes and male protagonists as action heroes. So it's been really interesting to see like the sexism in this genre kind of unfold, and almost the sexism in publishing kind of unfold before my eyes. So on one hand, I feel super defensive that it's a teen spy thriller. So obviously you have to suspend your disbelief. It's kind of like a no-brainer.
Right.
Kids don't usually engage in the spy world
on
any real basis. But to have it pointed out only when females are the protagonists and not when the males are the protagonists is kind of an interesting counter, I guess. It's interesting to see. But so I suppose what I'm saying is when female readers read my character and she has these extreme skills, and obviously it's not realistic, but it's fun, and I have her be particularly skilled in many things for a reason. I hope the girls see their own skills as making them powerful, and they shouldn't be ashamed of them and shouldn't shirk all their talents.
Right.
They should embrace them.
Yeah.
And there's a reason my girl is in a hyper reality, because it is a little extreme to be, you know, so good at so many things. At the same time, girls are good at many things, and girls are so good at so many things, and they might not be skills that you can quantify as skiing or piano playing or playing the violin, but there are other skills that girls have, and they can possess multiple skills and be good at a variety of things and be very good at those things. And I think oftentimes we treat girls like they can't be good at so many things.
Yeah.
And so I hope the girls just see themselves wanting to embrace their own special talents and not be ashamed of them and be bold.
What's interesting is when you say that, it's almost kind of like how your parents raised you to get out and explore and be creative and again, you know, expand on your talents and
I love that.
You know, and I'm kind of seeing that connection here. And
That's
here you are,
this
book is kind of doing the same thing. That's you hope these, you know, especially the girls walk away with like, hey, you guys can do anything.
Right.
You know, expand, do whatever you put your mind to, kind of thing. I think
love
that's
that.
cool.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
I'll owe my mom that one.
We'll give credit to mom for that, right?
Yes, always.
So if someone wanted to get the book, who's listening here, and what would be the best way to go about that? Because I know you went with a publisher, and I'm sure it's everywhere.
So it's everywhere. But I mean, I always encourage people first to go with your local bookstore.
Okay.
So like here in Salt Lake, I know the King's English Bookshop has them, Frost Books, the Children's Hour. And then wherever you're listening, local bookstores. There could be, and the reason I say that is they are the ones who support authors. They support them via, you know, all the debut platforms, and they have them on for interviews, and they really give back to authors. And so, and if you can't, go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Target. Right. It's available on Amazon. As of today, I know that they're back up to date with the stock. So hopefully it's back in stock fully. But yeah, if you can, support your local bookstore. And if not, I mean, it's available everywhere. So
yeah, I like that. I've never heard of it said that way, that the local bookstores will do more supportive things for the author.
100%. They support you. They encourage you. It's not that they advertise for you, but they interact with you in a way that enables you to really tell your story and to share your story. And so they do give back to authors immensely. Right. And so I always like to support them first. Yeah.
Right. Like whereas Amazon is more of you're one of a billion books on there, and it's just
and the bookseller they're not passionate about you or your genre. Right. Whereas the booksellers at the indies really care about books and telling stories.
Yeah.
So
what was your greatest moment in writing this book?
That's a great question. I will say there was a special moment when I have 4 daughters, and I don't know if we talked about this time or last time, but we,
I know, can't keep it straight.
Can't keep it straight. So I have 4 daughters, and my husband, I started writing because we were living I was living away from home, but we were in Kentucky for my husband's residency for 4 years, and then came to Utah for his fellowship for another 3. But I was home. I'd graduated college, and I was not pursuing a graduate program because I didn't feel good about that with having strangers watch my baby, and I was too paranoid. So
Sure.
I stayed home, and I was happy with that decision.
Yeah.
But I found myself alone pretty much 95% of the nights and weekends. And I wrote for fun because it was interesting, and I loved it. But I never pursued, as I said earlier, I never pursued publication. It wasn't on my radar. I just wrote lots of books and lots of stories just for my own entertainment.
Yeah.
And TV wasn't entertaining enough for me, I guess.
Yeah.
So I wrote and wrote. And I always said, I like to write because my children don't do anything I say, but my characters do everything I say. So it was this, sense of control. Or
sure, yeah.
So because I did that, I thought I would postpone publication until I had a book done, until it felt right. And like I said, it wasn't really on my radar. And then when I finished this particular book, Girl from Nowhere, and I felt like I'd reached a point where it was as far as I could take it without maybe an editor or with someone. I knew it was ready. Mm-hmm. And then I got an agent, and then we went on to publish. But I had my kids home, and I loved being a stay-at-home mom. It was really, I cherished it. And when I received the offer from Bloomsbury, we'd been on a vacation, my husband and I. And so we came back from vacation on like a Wednesday, and it was September, and we went straight from the airport to the school pickup. And it was the first day, because I'd been on vacation. We left the first day of school. So it'd been like 10 days. And I picked up my daughters from school, and it was the first day all 4 of them had been in school. Okay. So it was like my first day where I'd been on an airplane for 10 hours, but it was theoretically my first day having my kids all in school.
Right.
And that was the day I received the offer from Bloomsbury to publish.
Wow.
So for me, it was like it came full circle, that there's a time and a place. And I'd felt a little bit self-conscious that I hadn't pursued publication earlier because I had finished stories.
Sure.
But I just didn't want to be under the pressure of a deadline or under the pressure of publishing if I was home with my kids, because that was my priority. And I was confident in my decision to make that my priority. And then it was just such a tender mercy to have it. And the day that they're all in school, and I thought I'd have time. I don't have time. Turns out it's a facade that moms have all this time when your kids go to school. But at the time, it was such a sweet moment to have that of all days be the day that I received this publishing offer. Yeah. So it was kind of fortuitous, and
that's very cool.
I felt like it had been the right decision all along to wait, and I'm so glad I did. So
that's awesome.
And that was last September 2018, for those who are asking.
Okay.
So it's about, as a debut fiction author, it's about 18 months to 2 years between the time you sign with a publisher and the time you publish. Yeah. Because there's a lot to go through.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's really cool. And I can imagine how great that felt in that moment,
Yeah, it was a great
kind of that satisfaction, like, hey, I've done it.
Well, it was kind of like, oh, I did make the right choice. I thought you second guessed yourself, but really it was the right choice.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you come across as a very confident person.
Oh, it's a twin thing.
You laugh. Yeah. Is it a twin thing?
Maybe, I guess.
Why do you say that?
Because no one else can hurt you. You have your twin. It's like, there's no, I don't know how to describe it. It's not that I'm confident. I would say you always have a defender protector. Like our husbands always joke, it doesn't matter if one twin's wrong or right, they'll always defend each other. So
exactly. Yeah.
There's a sense of she's my shield. So you don't feel like I feel less vulnerable. Yeah. In life because I have a twin.
Interesting.
So I don't know if I'd call it confidence. I would maybe call it naivety. I don't know.
No, I mean, I use the word confident. You come across as very confident, very well spoken. Oh, well, and again, I think it goes back. I always go back to, that's why I love talking about where people have come from and what did they go through. And that's usually where you can kind of see where these things start to form. And,
I love that.
It sounds like you had really good parents who were really trying to teach you to believe in yourself and to move forward and do the things that you love to do. And, so it's really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it.
And it's funny, my parents could not be, like I said, they were divorced when I was very young. They could not be more different, but collectively, they taught us what we needed to hear, I think. So.
Sure. Well, if you could, people who are listening to this right now, if you could, give them a challenge to do.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. If there's a challenge that you could give our listeners that, whether they want to write a book or whether they're struggling or whether they're trying to believe in themselves, or maybe they're struggling with kindness or lack of kindness. What's a challenge you could maybe give our listeners?
So as a writer, I'm going to circle back to writing.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is I don't know that you have to be a good, talented, or competent writer to write anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always felt as though putting words on a page enables me to see them more clearly.
Mm.
And I've thrown out thousands and thousands and thousands of, I'm sitting here now with a legal pad with, line notes, and I've gone through thousands of these in my life,
sure,
if not tens of thousands, which makes me super wasteful. But the reason is I write things down. And so I guess my challenge is to not just think about things or talk them through, but take the time to write something down, and particularly only positive things, because how do I make this an actual challenge? I'm ruminating over this. I challenge you to write down only the things you're good at and nothing else. Just write down what are your skills and capabilities. Like we talk about my character who can speak all these languages and climb walls and, all these crazy things that obviously most people couldn't do. But I like to consider that a hyper reality, and yet we exist in reality. And I challenge your listeners to spend the time to physically write down all the things they are good at, and all those skills that might not be, we used to call them talent show skills because I'm a terrible singer and I'm so tone deaf. So I always felt like I can never go on a talent show because I can neither sing nor dance nor any of that. So I think we consider talents in that regard, but skills, talents, whatever you want to call them, characteristics that you bring to the table, write them down and look at them and see for yourself how powerful that list is.
Okay.
That's
my
challenge.
Great challenge. No, I think that's fantastic. And I think focusing on the positives versus the negatives, because it'd be easy. It seems like it's easier that we always focus on the negative,
Right.
And so I love that challenge and what have you on there. If someone wanted to reach out to you to ask you a question, or if there's a website you can refer them to, what would be the best way to do that?
So I'm on Instagram often, at Tiffany_Rosenhan, or my website, TiffanyRosenhan.com. Or just reach out to me via email, TiffanyRosenhanAuthor@gmail.com. And I can give that all to you.
I'm going to spell your last name just so people have it. It's Rosenhan. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and I love to hear from readers and questions.
Please,
just reach out.
Yeah, please do. And I encourage everyone to go get the book,
Thank you.
And it sounds fantastic. And I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come
thanks for
share
having me.
your thoughts and your feelings and a part of your story with us today.
Well, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for, allowing me to be here.
Absolutely. Well, there you go, guys. Another amazing person with a great story, and thank you for joining us. And I want to thank Tiffany again, and I want to thank all of you for believing in me. Please share this with your family and friends, and then, I can't wait to do this again soon. So until next time.